welcome to The Imperial Truth, the Horus Heresy podcast. This is episode 12, once again brought to you by Scattershot Painting. Go and find them on Facebook at Scattershot Painting, or go through the links on the show notes at theimperialtruth.com. Today, again, I'm joined by my good friend Daniel Como.
Hello.
Hello. How you doing?
Yeah, good. Thanks, yourself.
Wonderful. Cheers. So we'll dive straight in, as is our usual thing, into bits of news. And we've had a lot of releases since last recorded. Should we start with Pollux?
Yep.
The Christmas special reveal, as Forge World have want to do.
Yeah, they released pictures of it over time, didn't they? Like a jigsaw.
Yeah, it's become a bit of a tradition. And I think it's fair to say it's gone down pretty well.
Yeah, I thought it was amazing.
It's one of those moments where it almost makes me want to do the Imperial Fists. And then I remember that they're Imperial Fists, and I realised that I really don't want to do anything to do with Dawn. But that's by the by. I think it's an outstanding model, and hopefully we'll start to see a bit more speed of these releases now, with the breaking up of the guys doing the Primarch releases and these guys doing the characters.
Yeah, I was going to say it's good to see some more characters other than Primarchs being released again.
Yeah, linked with that, I forgot to write it down actually, so we might as well go into it. Have you seen the bundles? They've got the Rylanor and the Salamanders guy I can't remember the name of, which I think are amazing. Yeah. So we've got some name dreadnoughts, and I know a lot of people will be happy to see Rylanor. They'll be really happy if they see him in print again, but I don't think that's going to happen. Not if Laurie Golding's got anything to do with it anyway. Rylanor did not get off his fan. Simple as that. But it's good to have the start of the models there on them. Alongside those, well, not long after that was the Solar Auxilia Flamer units. Yeah. And these guys look fantastic. Trev Goddard, I think he's posted up on the Facebook site of his that he's painting up. Yeah. Or that certainly he's painted up the other ones, but the models themselves are phenomenal. Again, as I said, I'm not a huge... I would want to do my Imperial Army a different style, but every time I look at them, I think they're...
What sort of style would you go for then?
I don't know, but different.
Okay.
All I know is that I would prefer something that looks slightly different. I think I'm probably waiting till they do either... Well, probably not the Spire Guard, because I'll be doing Space Wolves in the end. But maybe something, making my own based on something else.
I'm not sure what it is. I like the models, but it's just something that just puts them off slightly.
Yeah, the diving helmet and the heavy kind of...
It's almost kind of got a steampunk feel to it. I'm not sure if it fits or not, but that's just my opinion.
I think the fact that they're elite Imperial Army as well. Yeah. I probably would want more meat shield Imperial Army.
Well, we know how good those kind of things work.
Yeah,
as we'll talk about later.
Or more conventional Imperial Army. So, but that's just that's just a preference on kind of how I want my force to grow, and not being aware that the Solar Auxilia were going to be this until they were released, or until we heard those first rumours about their rules. Yeah. So, yeah, but they're looking fantastic. And alongside that, we had the Tech Thralls come down in price. Yes, which we'll talk about. We had a game. We'll talk about a little bit later about the Tech Thralls, but I think everyone could accept that them coming down in price was a good thing. Yeah, and obviously it means that Forge World probably didn't sell as many as they were wanting to sell, but they're in line with the Solar Auxilia now, so I can see them shifting, and I'm certainly tempted. But as I say, we'll talk a little bit more about that in the game. And then really recently, because we are recording this late, we've had the Imperial Fist shoulder pads done, but today was the Templar Brethren upgrade kits and the Phalanx Warder upgrade kits, which I think look fantastic, personally. Yeah, I really like them. Do make your Brethren quite expensive if you want to buy them.
Yeah, it's always going to be the way, though, isn't it, when you have to buy an upgrade kit rather than the models themselves.
Yeah. I would think that we would see a bundle at some point. Yeah. because that tends to be the way it goes, is you get these bits and pieces out and then a bundle appears where you can purchase them with other bits for a little bit cheaper.
Yeah, I don't think there's... because they do a Strike Force bundle for a lot of the Legions, don't they? I don't think they do an Imperial Fist one yet, do they?
Not that I'm aware of, not without looking.
So maybe that might be what we'll see, is maybe a Strike Force with the upgrade kit included.
Either way, we tend to see that there's these bundles come along after a period of time, and most things get put in a bundle, even if it's for a short period of time. So I would like to think that these get put into a bundle to make it slightly more affordable. But it's good to see that they're part of it. I know a lot of people were clamouring for these to come out, so we have them, which is good, and then hopefully following on from this, we'll get the Raven Guard bits and all those bits that will slowly trickle out. They're never going to release them all at once, because then they'll have a big gap where they don't release anything, and then that'll be bad as well. So it's moving along. They're doing a good job, I think, of moving it along little by little. I did see someone posted a picture of, I think might have been on the Independent Characters Forum, of Forge World shipping a tank. It might even have been the Fire Raptor, and the long hull piece of it was attached to a piece of cardboard with rubber bands.
Yes, that's how mine came. Yes.
And yours came as well.
Yeah,
which is a newer development, I think. I think they have been doing it a little while with those bits.
Yeah, I don't remember it on the Storm Eagle. I can't remember it coming on the Storm Eagle, but yeah, it was definitely on the Fire Raptor
for shipping, which I think is really just such a simple little move, but it's really good for those pieces where they have had problems with them not just being warped, but being kind of warped in transit.
Yeah. Because they're quite long and thin, so I can see it happening. And as we've talked about before, I found it such an easy model to put together compared to some of that size kits I've had issues with before. This one went together really nicely, and that may have contributed towards it because it kept the pieces more in their original shape as they should be.
Yeah, so I think Forge World doing good things in that respect. Which again, I mean, it's such a simple little thing, but if it helps the modeler get his pieces together a little bit better, then there's never going to be a bad thing for such a small cost as well for them. And they released pictures of a new Dreadnought. Yeah. Well, a partial picture of a new Dreadnought.
It came in the Forge World blog post, didn't it?
Yeah, the latest blog post.
There was several pictures of the studio's Contempt Dreadnoughts, which all look really nice together. Yeah. And then in the middle of it, there was this sneak peek shot of the new variant of Dreadnought.
Yeah, which has got a lot of people chatting to various extents on how big it is, because we can't really determine scale that well.
I'm going to assume that the head is the same size as a Contempt Dreadnought head, which it is just an assumption, but it makes sense, really, especially when you look at the gun barrels, because you can just make out the guns as well. Yeah, on that picture. So I would say it's probably about that sort of size. So I'd say maybe slightly larger than the Contempt Dreadnought.
I mean, yeah, the kind of logical thing is that when Forge World talked about releasing a larger Dreadnought at Games Day, that this may be the Dreadnought that is larger. It's got quite a distinctive shape to it. People are comparing it to a ship, a boat. Yeah. It does have I can see why, but personally I think if you like the Contemptor kind of form, I don't see it being a wide variance from that. But then I would also say there are fine lines for some people.
Yeah, it's difficult to tell at the moment, but just from that picture, it kind of looks a little bit out of proportion with the rest of the model. So I think what we need to do is see the rest of the model to be able to see how it looks.
Yeah, I mean, if it's more of a similar size to the Thanatar Siege Automata, then it's going to be an impressive piece of kit. Yeah. But we'll have to wait and see.
I'm kind of reserving judgment at the moment. I'm not 100% sold on it, but as I say, it's just a partial picture at a different angle. So we'll just have to see what the whole thing looks like. Really,
there's something about it that appeals to me. I don't know what it is. I just think it looks. I'm quite excited to see it.
Giant robot.
Well, but I've said before that the Contemptor, I don't dislike the Contemptor, but it's okay, and I think they look cool. Yeah, but the body shapes are, it just sticks out in my when I look at it. I just think, the body shape. I don't know. But, yeah, we'll see. Frankly. Well, at the end of the day, you can't... You can only make, like, small kind of opinions based on a partial picture that is taken at one angle. So yes. But I think that was all the model kind of news that's come out.
Yeah. It was quite a bit, actually, really.
Well, I say
it's the past couple of weeks.
Been a while since we recorded in the build up to Christmas as well. So, but it's good. Keep it coming. You know, they've still got lots to work on, and with book 4 coming out in a few months, allegedly it might be ready slightly ahead of schedule. Whether they release it ahead of schedule is a different matter. But with that coming out, they're going to have to work on other bits and pieces as well, because they're going to have all the Ultramarine stuff to do, plus anything new they give to the word bearers.
Yep. And
maybe demons. So yeah, they got plenty to be getting on with. Bless them. Black Library, they had their advent calendar, which we talked about on the last show. Haven't actually got round to listening to much of that though, but there are 4 or 5 or 6 stories in various forms on that, but you can still go to Black Library and search for the advent calendar and look through them individually to find the audios and the...
Is there a timescale on how long it's going to be available for?
I don't think so, and I think normally they become available just as standard anyway, so I don't think it's necessarily an issue.
Well, we've already said before that all the stories get released in some format later on anyway, don't they?
Yeah, all stories, all formats eventually. So, but they're up there I went through a little while ago and just kind of made sure I got them all in one go, which came to like £24, something like that. But it's the nature of the beast. Buying the audios, they're a little bit more expensive. Yeah. So, and then not long ago, a couple of days ago, they've got the Masters of the First and the Long Night. I think it's the Long Night CD available for pre-order, which is coming out. Which is Aaron Dembski Bowden's double story, which is Aaron Dembski Bowden. So that's going to tell you so much. People are going to be all over that like a tramp on chips, and sure that he won't fail to deliver on those. That's his style. I did also hear an interview with Jim Swallow on the Talking Eds podcast, which is a geek podcast run by the guys at 50 Shades of Grey. 50 Shades of Geek. Knew I was going to do that. So, run by the guys at 50 Shades of Geek. And he mentioned that he has another Garrow piece called Ashes of Fealty coming out at some point soon, which sounded quite interesting. So if you are interested in listening to that interview, look at one of the December episodes of 50 Shades of Talking Eds. You can find them at 50 Shades of Geek Facebook page, etc., etc. They do have usually a fair bit of Horus Heresy chat because they are quite the two guys who run the podcast are big Heresy fans, so that's always good. And I think that's pretty much it for the news. One final thing to do before we move on is to announce the competition winner of the Horus Heresy Lodge medal. I know you got yours in the end, didn't you, Dan, from a friend. In fact, we're recording once again in our satellite studio at Pete's house. He sat in the corner listening to us ramble on, and his brother was with me at the Weekender and managed to pick up an extra Lodge medal. Yeah,
big thanks to Mark for that. He had a spare one going. He's not really interested in the Lunar Wolves, whereas obviously I'm a Sons of Horus player, so I was very interested in it, and so he's very kindly passed it on to me. So thanks very much for that, Mark.
Yeah, but as I say, these things are pretty limited now. I don't know what's going to go on. We're a month away from the Forge World Weekender. Yeah, just over a month. And whether they do anything there or not, I don't know. Haven't heard anything yet, but we'll have to see. Hopefully they'll do some other Legion medals at various points. But yeah, the competition winner, as drawn at random just before the show started, is one Dorian Zaharia. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. I will send you an email and we can get that shipped out to you wherever you may be. So thank you for everyone who emailed in trying to win the prize, and for the feedback. There's some good bits of feedback on there. I've replied to a few bits and taken a few bits into account, and some bits are stuff we're already trying to work out, which is one of the reasons why I'm round at the satellite studio, where we got a slightly better setup and slightly better technical sound engineer in the corner.
Comfy chairs as well.
And comfy chairs, yeah, I can lay down and record, so it's all good. So yeah, congratulations to Dorian. So I'll get an email out to you and we can get that sent off straight away. Well, I think that's it for the intro, so we'll have a little bit of a musical interlude and we'll come back and we'll chat about Horus Heresy resources. Do you have transport bags filled with grey plastic models? A centrepiece model that you can't yet bring yourself round to try and do justice to? A total hatred of painting blocky vehicles? Or even just the idea of an army that you haven't yet bought any models for and can't see any way of fitting in painting time around the job, kids and everything else life throws at you? Maybe you should give Scattershot Painting a message. Chris has been painting for 10 years and you can see examples of his work on Facebook pages. Prices start from as little as $5 a model for good tabletop quality models, and there will be plenty of communication, including a lot of photos as the project progresses. Chris specialises in single miniatures and is just as happy painting armies. So whether you want a single model painted or a whole army put together from scratch, then head over to Facebook and search for Scattershot Painting and send Chris a message. Moving on to the main segment of the show, just thought it would be good to discuss where you can go and get information about the heresy, whether that's inspiration or information or, what just discussion, just entertainment. So something that get asked a lot is, where do you get this from and what site did you get that from? And although we might not mention a lot of specific sites because we could be here for a while talking about specific instances, you can get generalizations of where people look and gather information and inspiration from. So the first thing, the easiest place to get information about the heresy is Forge World.
Yep.
They have the 4 books that are out. I know a lot of people who play the heresy have started and got in using the campaign books, which are brilliant. The Great Crusade Army List book and the Legion Specific book give you all the info to play the game, but as a resource for information about the heresy, they're much more limited.
Yeah.
So although they are great for getting into the gaming, if you do want more info, then it's the 4 main books. I know that you've bought a few of them, haven't you?
I've actually only bought Conquest so far.
Conquest. Oh, you're talking about buying...
Yeah, and then, because I'm about halfway through reading that, I've realised how great the background is and just the information on the story and everything is. So I want to go back and purchase those books, the first 3 books as well. So
yeah, so yes, say owning the first 4, and we got the 5th one coming out May time-ish, I believe, dealing with Calth. Those books provide some real detail on not just the events that they cover, so Isfan 3, Isfan 5, and then the campaign in book 4, which I can't remember the name of the area, and Calth will have in 5, but also background on those legions involved. And where it's different from Black Library, which we'll talk about in a second, is these aren't viewpoint information. This is information. So although there might be things related around certain characters in there, this is more background rather than a story.
Yeah, they're more like almost like historical reference books, really.
Yeah, I know it's kind of the account of... So these provide you with say, take Sons of Horus, for example, you get background on the Primarch, as much as it can give. Their fighting style, the history of the Legion, a few significant battles they've been in, and creates a much more detailed picture of the Legion than we've seen before, or you get in any of the Black Library books. So you're looking at maybe starting your own Legion, or starting a Legion. It might give you a little bit of an insight into which Legion you want to use.
Helps with inspiration.
Yeah, the only issue being that we haven't had all the Legions covered yet. But that's nature of the beast in the way that Forge World are releasing the books. It won't be long till we've got every Legion in some form or another. They also then provide information about the setting they are, so Isfahan 3 or Isfahan 5.
Yeah.
Providing you with what happened in that campaign, the areas, the again, significant battle points. So almost first port of call, I think, is those Horus Heresy books. And I know people are going to say they're expensive, which they are, but I think they're worth the value that you're paying for them.
If you compare it to how much you'd spend on a 40k codex, I think they're more than enough value for money. Yeah,
they're in. I've said it before. Therein lies the difference between value and cost.
Yeah,
and the cost is high, but the value is also high.
Yeah,
and I never really have a problem paying the money for something of which I'm going to get value out of. So,
and to be honest, with the release of the Armyless books, they're not essential if you just want to play the game. If you because you've got the lists and everything you need in the Crusade books and the Legion specific ones, so you don't need to spend the money if you don't want to. But as a resource, I think it's great value for money.
Yeah, definitely. And moving forwards, so it's only going to expand and expand as we go forwards. Alongside that, Black Library has its 30 plus Horus Heresy novels and various short stories and audio dramas and etc., which, as mentioned, are they are viewpoint stories. So every single story within the Black Library line you have to take into account the viewpoint of the storyteller.
It might not necessarily be the black and white factual information that you're looking for, but
every story in those will be tainted somewhat by the experiences of our main character and the information they have, and as I said, their kind of stance on things. The classic example we've used before is the scattering of the Primarchs. There is at least 3 instances of that coming up in the books in various forms, each one of them different. So I saw it again recently on a forum where someone almost quoted, and it's from the First Heretic, the scene as being a reason in an argument, and the first response was, but that was told by this person and this happened and etc. etc. So when you're looking at those as resources rather than as like information rather than inspiration, then you have to take that into account when you're doing it. But as inspiration, they're pretty dangerous things. The books, I know.
Well, I don't know about you, but it was the books that got me back into the heresy in a big way in the first place.
Yeah, there's no doubt that the novels started the ball rolling on the grand scale and for a lot of individuals. And I know from doing After Ulanor that we've had people say they've started to collect models because of the books before even delving into the 412 books. So I distinctly remember reading the first 20 pages of Fear to Tread and wanting to start a Blood Angels army because they were just awesome.
Yeah. And No Fear was one of the first times I've actually ever been interested in Ultramarines.
Yeah, and I don't think you're the only one to think that either. Yeah. I mean, funnily enough, it's the Horus Heresy, the Black Library books that put me off doing Imperial Fists.
Yeah.
Because of the nature of the Prime arc and what goes on in those stories, I'm just like, yeah, no, I'm all right. And conversely, it's the first time I've ever felt anything bar apathy towards the Iron Warriors.
Yeah.
I don't think you've read...
No,
you haven't read it's Angel Exterminatus.
Yeah.
But we get much more of the character of Perturabo in that than has ever been written about before. So that's certainly, yeah. Before that, I could take them or leave them. But after that, it's like, it sparks a few things.
It kind of takes away from the stereotypical black and white, these are the good guys, these are the bad guys, your evil supervillains versus your true heroes, and really allows you to see that there are various shades of grey in between the two factions.
Definitely. I think that might be worth noting, is that both you and I go back a long time with the history of 40k.
Yeah.
So our early kind of mutterings about the heresy were based on Index Astartes information and little bits thrown here and there, some of which is now kind of heretical tomes, I think they call them, in which they aren't part of the canon anymore. And those Index Astartes articles, although a lot are still around, the information is still around, it has changed a little bit.
Yeah.
But the information was extremely sparse. As far as we were aware back then, there were 6 or 7 battles and then Terror with a few thousand Marines.
Yeah. I think it was second edition was when I first got involved in the hobby, and I always remember the diorama that Mike McVeigh made of the Horus versus the Emperor.
Yeah, which is I think they still show it up at.
I think it's still there at the museum,
the Hall of Miniatures. However, that's going to look once they finish their upgrade of it.
But it was one of the few bits which showed full. I think it's the only time they'd ever shown what the Emperor actually looked like, and possibly Horus as well. I think there'd never really been any pictures of them. Or not that I could be wrong. So if I'm wrong, then please let us know.
This is us remembering at that time. Certainly at that time we hadn't seen many pictures or models or anything, and it was all very much that mythology.
Yeah,
that the heresy was a mythology, and now it's becoming more accessible as readers, as players of the game. So there is that aspect of us looking at these resources, and because some newer people to the heresy might be wondering, why are you saying that for? I've always known that, but so
I think it's now in the Black Library, but in the past 2 or 3 Black Library books that it's starting to venture into waters unknown for most of us. Yeah,
there's certainly a lot. The next stage of the heresy are much more open for them to write what they need to write. There are a few nodal points which they need to hit, but they are very few now. We've had most of them. We've had Calth, we've had Cygnus Prime, we've had Prospero. They've started on Talon, although the old Talon information is not the same as what's going to be the new Talon. It's based around the same, but there's things that don't add up when you actually look and break up the heresy on who should be there and who should be where. So there's lots of things that are being updated, but these Black Library novels, as well as being highly entertaining, do have a lot of information and a lot of inspiration as well. Yeah. See people basing their armies on certain characters or certain events in a Black Library book. Say a drop pod, Blood Angels attack force from the opening of Fear to Tread would be pretty amazing. But no, I've got enough plans, enough models, enough painting to do. Alongside the novels, Black Library, they did the comic book for McCragg's Honour. So there's that as well, which fits in that same kind of arena. Yeah, obviously a lot more visual, and possibly if you wanted the easiest way to get the most heresy information for your buck, kind of thing, would be Visions of Heresy. So kind of the overview of the whole heresy in one book with pictures, and telling you the story without going into the minutiae of what occurs.
How many versions have they done of Visions of Heresy now? Is this the second one?
Yeah, you had the the 4 individual books, which were then collected into the collected Visions.
And they were the ones based on the artwork from
Sabretooth games, which a lot of the artwork still exists in Visions, and a load more has been added. But the story's been updated and brought into line. I mean, it was the the first, whichever volume it was of Visions, because I bought the individual versions. Yeah. Was the first time we knew what the Emperor was doing in his secretive plan. Yeah. Because until then it was always, the Emperor's gone back to Terra and he's doing this secretive plan and everyone's a bit annoyed with him. And it was that first time it was like, whoa, he's there doing this, doing that, and blah, blah, blah. And oh, okay. And it was like, I remember reading that for the first time and going in and going, oh, wow, we actually know kind of a little bit about what he was up to. So, but yeah, Visions is the up-to-date, as far as we've gone, canonical thing, overview. I'd say a very broad overview, but gives a decent representation of what's going on with some cool artwork, cool stuff in there. Something that's not heresy, but which allows us to look at the heresy, is actually a lot of 40k books now are harking back to that. They're linking in to heresy. So we have characters who appear in the heresy, are mentioned or referred to, or are in these books which are 40k, because 40k is not actually just 40k anymore. 40k is the period of time post scouring until the 41st millennium, 998 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Tyranids coming, etc., etc. So we have things like Battle for the Fang is set in 32k, I believe. I'm trying to remember. We've got Talon of Horus. So we've got Talon of Horus, which is set shortly after the Scouring, I believe. But because of the nature of the warp and everything else involved in that, there's a lot of harking back to the heresy.
Yeah.
Ahriman, Sorcerer, that John French collection of books, again, naturally will hark back to the heresy. So there's a lot of information in those normal 40k books now to link back, which if you're a heresy player, then books like Talon of Horus are almost kind of just additional reading.
Yep.
You haven't read that yet?
No, unfortunately not.
So
it's on my list.
Definitely worth reading for anyone who likes the Black Legion as well. If you're looking around the Black Library website, I'd say there's a lot of links in, and even books that don't necessarily link in, there are some, just a character, a demon will appear who was mentioned in the heresy. Though those ones don't necessarily add more to the heresy, but the ones that are set in that 32 to 35 millennia kind of time period do link in. So if you're playing heresy and you like Sons of Horus or Black Legion, definitely read Talon of Horus. So yeah, that was I think for Black Library, I think that's what they've done. That encompasses all of what they've done. You mentioned Sabretooth games. Did you ever play the card game?
A long time ago, but yeah.
See, I never owned a single card.
No.
I'm
sure. Did I not play with you? Because
no.
This might have been before we.
Pete's putting his hand up.
Oh, did you have? Okay, yeah, that explains it then. So yeah, we had.
So you and Pete used to play the old Sabretooth
and Mark,
games.
I think, as well. Maybe.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. So, I never got into it for whatever reason. But in that, there was a lot of artwork in that.
Yeah.
So if you see those cards around,
I might have to see if I can find it. I might still have my old decks at home. So
that'd be amazing. Yeah. But we've had that game. We've had various iterations of the board game for the Battle for Terra and the Heresy. Up to the latest one, which we've played a few games of, the Horus Heresy board game by Fantasy Flight Games, which is brilliant. But that can inspire, again, it's more Heresy game. And it's a really good board game anyway. But
it gives you a good feel for the actual size of the siege.
Yeah, and, kind of it gives you the feel of the pressing nature of time that Horus feels under. And the kind of the feel as an Imperial player that it's coming, and you've got to sit and kind of almost wait for it to a certain extent and try and deal with it. So that's one. They've also done computer games coming out now. So we've had the Drop Assault, Horus Heresy Drop Assault, and a few others being.
Is that
planned.
out yet?
I don't think it's out yet. I played it.
Yeah.
Thingy very quickly.
Yeah, we had to go at Warhammer Fest.
Yeah, there's plans for Heresy gaming on the computer, so something to keep an eye out for. Mm-hmm. So most of the licenses have been 40k so far.
Yeah.
And as an interesting aside, did you see that BioWare have bought up the rights for 40k for
really?
Warhammer? Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I saw something online recently that BioWare are making a Games Workshop computer game.
Maybe we'll see a Dragon Age / Mass Effect type game then. Maybe
in the long
like
run.
That.
Yeah,
that'd be
I don't
amazing.
think it'll be the first thing they produce,
No.
but yeah. But it was just an interesting piece, I thought. So you never know. Maybe the Heresy get pulled into that. That would be really cool to see a games company like BioWare, who tend to put the effort in. They don't just churn out games a great deal. So we can hold our fingers crossed on that one. So yeah, I think if you look at like the hard copies, that's like the original and first places to get information about the Heresy. Has always been, always will be, Black Library and Forge World, and Games Workshop to a lesser extent, and their subsidiaries and whoever they've given their licenses to.
Yeah. I'll tell you one thing I would love to see would be, we've just been talking about the Horus Heresy board game by Fantasy Flight Games. They do quite a few Games Workshop role-play games as well. So it would be really interesting to see if they did a Horus Heresy based RPG. Just simply for the background that normally gets encompassed in those type of books.
Yeah, it would be an interesting one how they would work the license with doing, because the Heresy isn't solid yet. We've still got a lot of it to do, so to hand over that license, they would be quite restrictive in what they were allowed to write. But maybe the future, and also that game in itself would be very combat orientated.
Well, maybe we would just see like a campaign system for the current 40k book, which features Space Marines. I can't remember what it's called now.
Deathwatch.
Yeah,
I know of groups that do Great Crusade era versions of the Rogue Trader role-playing game.
That works. That works quite well for that, though, doesn't it?
Yeah. So they've taken one of those campaign, one of those RPG systems. Well, it's the same system, one RPG book, and transferred it into the Heresy, which I don't think takes a huge amount of reimagining to do.
No.
So you could potentially have your Deathwatch could become your kill team or something that's been sent out to do tasks in the Heresy. So, yeah, whether they allow the license to do it in the future, it'd be quite interesting to see. But it's hot property at the moment, the Heresy. But I think it would come down to control of information and whether that third party would have enough leeway to do what they want to do.
Sure.
Until GW are done with the Heresy, as it were. So yeah, those are the kind of like the physical forms of info. But a lot of time spent now looking up these kind of things is done online. And as I say, we're always getting asked questions, but I for one use Facebook a fair amount.
Yep.
Not everyone's a fan of it.
I have to admit, I'm not a fan of Facebook.
It's fair to say. But I know a few forums and stuff have almost closed down and moved to Facebook.
Yeah.
Because of the ease of a lot of people being on there. And having seen a few groups grow up on Facebook, so we have Crusade and Heresy as one. Trev Goddard's got his Solar Auxilia group. There's an Ultramarines one as well, where people are just posting pictures specific to the Ultramarines in that one.
Yeah.
So, and the Solar Auxilia one's almost all Solar Auxilia, and they can chat rules, and it's quite instantaneous to be on there. It's easy to get photos on there. That's one beauty of Facebook.
Yeah.
It's very easy to post those pictures quickly. So if you are on Facebook, then whack in the search bar Horus Heresy, or your Legion, or anything that you can think of like that, and see what kind of groups come up. Because, I say, there are a handful at least, and it might take you a while to find one that's suitable for you. There's something I think across the whole internet when we're talking about everything, not every forum or group is going to be appropriate for what you want.
Yeah.
And I know I've joined and left a few because they didn't quite do what I wanted them to do, but that's cool. That's how it should be, really.
Yeah.
Nice and easy. I would say for people who don't like, there are people out there who just don't like Facebook having details and things like that, which is understandable. But it's easy enough to make up a fake account, get a Hotmail web, email address to set up. You don't need any kind of comeback. Then you can have. I've got friends on there who don't want to be found, so they're on there with a false name and nothing about their life goes on there.
Ashamed of their hobbies.
No. It's more they do a job where they're not allowed to have that much information
of course,
out.
Yeah.
So I mean, some people are reticent to have their hobby out because of the nature of the people they know or their work environment, which would cause them problems. Yeah. So again, putting up you can have anything as your name. You can start using Horus Heresy characters as your Facebook name.
I've seen that done plenty of times.
It's a throwaway account, isn't it? So I would personally recommend jumping on a few of those on Facebook. Say it's one of the best paid places to see photos of other people's models online, and to see a great variety of them. Forums. Do you want any forums for the Heresy?
I'm a bit of a lurker when it comes to forums. There's a couple of. The main one I tend to use is Bolter and Chainsword. Although that's not a heresy-specific forum.
They have an Age of Darkness area, don't they, specifically for the heresy.
Yeah, and it's good for all aspects of the hobby for heresy. So gaming, there's plenty of tacticas and lists and rules discussions all the time, and there's some really good blogs on there as well. It's good to see people painting and expanding their armies.
Yeah, I think the most obvious place to go is to find a forum, whether it's Daka, Bolter and Chainsword, and a number of other 40k forums which also cater for the heresy.
They generally have a subsidiary, don't they, for the heresy?
Yeah,
on there, so.
I know there are. I talk about quite often. I'll say it again. The First Expedition forum is a heresy specific forum, and the Heresy 30k.
Yeah.
Which again is a heresy-specific forum. So those two are great if you don't want that chatter about 40k. That tends to be much more centred around those. But so your Dakas, your things. Again, you're finding a lot of photos, a lot of rules discussion. That's more where I find you get those discussions about rules and tactics is on the forums. And being quite specific in those, because you can search through all the headings you want to find the rules you want, and whatever info is relevant to you at the end of the day.
Yeah,
I would say with the forums is you've got much less opportunity to filter in terms of, yes, you can search for the subject you want to see, but anyone will be answering on that. So if you are on a forum where there are a number of people who've got polar opposite ideals to, then you are going to have quite a lot of kind of butting of heads on those ideas. So again, even more than the Facebook groups, there are certain forums I don't go on. Yeah, because it tends to be more on the forums that you get that louder
trolls,
negative. Yeah, you get trolls period, but you also get the louder negative voice.
Yes,
I find.
Yeah.
And many a time that I've gone onto a forum and had to log off because I don't enjoy what's going on or what have you. But you're not going to stop that to an extent. So it is what it is. Again, you get selective with which forums you go on, and you find one that suits you in that aspect. And the forums I was on 10 years ago, some of them are still going, but I haven't visited in 5 or 6 years. Yeah. So you move around till you find a group that say fits in. And find ones with good moderators
Mm-hmm.
is the other key matter. I know the ones I visit most often have very active, sensible moderators, and they don't put up with too much rubbish. So it tends to keep the site clean and working how it should do.
Yeah,
which is always a bonus.
As I say, you tend to get a lot of people's individual blogs on forums as well. Which is something I've always enjoyed. I love looking at people's models that they bring up, which is what, as you say, on Facebook you see it all the time. But just being able to see someone expanding their army over time and being able to discuss like their colour schemes and their conversions, that's where I find forums are definitely good for that as well.
Yeah, I've never caught on with the blogs thing quite so much. I don't know why. I think I tend to dip in and out of people's info a bit more than following specific blogs. But yeah, you say that the forums are good for that, but then expanding on from that, there are a lot of blogs out there run by people specifically.
Yes, yeah.
So I know you follow a couple, don't you?
Yeah, A Galaxy in Flames is a good one. Funny enough, that's the name of my YouTube channel.
Yeah.
It's nothing to do with me. It's a completely separate entity. I think they're based in Australia.
Yeah.
There's another one. Oh, Traitor's Hand as well. That's another. I think those guys work quite closely together as well, because you've got Traitor's Hand in Australia as well. Got some really good things out there.
Again, with blogs, we could be here all day naming blogs.
Yes, yeah.
The thing to do is it takes a little bit of legwork sometimes to start off finding the ones you want to see. But I think Galaxy in Flames has a link to lots of other blogs.
Yes.
It's a very common thing in blogs is to link to other blogs.
It's quite a tight-knit community, the bloggers.
Yeah. So as soon as you find one blog you like, you'll find these links to similar blogs alongside. So it becomes a more rapid kind of way to find what you're after. Sure. And yeah, if you've got Legion specific blogs, you've got these blogs by people, blogs by groups. Mm-hmm. Again, within that blogging community, there's a wide variety of things, and it's a case of getting your search engine out and having a look. Some people are better at putting their blogs out there than other people, but it's just the way it is. Yeah. But that's a really we can't really talk too much about blogs because they are so individualized by nature of what they are. So one will just be, I've painted these models and this is what I'm painting. Another will be, right, I'm writing this story and I'm bringing this in and my friends are doing this. And so you get to Traitor's Hand's a group of guys, isn't it?
Yes.
So they're all feeding in to it from each other, and it's quite a constant thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the one thing I'd want from a blog, is to be semi-regular at least. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I would lose interest in it.
Yeah.
And move on. But again, some people don't mind that. Some people do. But it's very individualised. Alongside the blogs is some of them will have YouTube channels as well.
Yep.
So you use YouTube a bit, don't you, for those kind of things?
There's a fair few. But YouTube generally tends to be better for, once again, for modelling purposes, for people to show off their painting. But primarily it's really good for things like battle reports, because that's where people generally tend to show off their games as they're being played. So that's where that's a good resource for, is just seeing how games are played.
And again, the way YouTube works, if you like a video, if you subscribe to a channel, it again will suggest other channels that are similar. Doesn't always hit it right, but once you start onto that, once you've connected to 2 or 3 different things, you'll start to get options to go to more and more and more of those. And again, so you've got your battle reports. Some people are only doing battle reports like 40k side Scorpion.
Scorpion 82,
who a lot of people love his battle reports. You've got the guys in Australia,
the WW40k, who they're the Traitor's Hand guys, and that's where they do their.
There's a lot of videos they tend to put up of their.
It's not just Heresy 30k, but they do a lot of that. But they
also do Heresy versus 40k, don't they? Which is quite interesting. Which is not something I see a lot talked about or written about online. So that's quite an interesting view of what's going on. But also beyond that, a lot of painting studios will have their own channels, so Ichiban Painting, and you can throw these names out there. Templar's Crusade is one that deals a lot in scenery as well as models. And
that's quite a
like
good overall channel for scenery and modelling.
Yeah,
and gaming as well.
One of the first ones I watched for the Heresy, because they did a massive Heresy.
The drop site massacre,
and the Gates of Terror as well.
Yeah.
So, if you put in Horus Heresy gaming into the search bar on YouTube, you're going to get.
Yeah. And once again, there's a lot of people that they know each other, so so their channels are all kind of linked in ways, so you can find one from another. And so forth. So, like just talking about Templar's Crusade, there's a couple of his mates have YouTube channels which are really good. Marnius Augustus Calgar, I think, is one. It's quite. He's got a really good painting channel.
All right,
showing off that he's originally it was Lunar Wolves, I think he was doing, but eventually led to Sons of Horus and all sorts of things like that.
Yeah. So again, it's. I think. I didn't necessarily avoid YouTube, but I didn't really consider it as much of a gaming resource as probably I should have. And to be honest, I wasn't. It took me a long while to get onto watching videos on YouTube anyway. I was just like, I don't want to see cats and things like that. So I avoided that in favour of other things, but I've become more and more of a convert of that actually through other things as well. But
it's probably my main resource for definitely for modelling. But it's one of my main resources I use. I've recently just painted up Horus.
Yeah.
And I'm really proud of how it's come out, because I used a lot of advanced techniques which I took from a YouTube channel, Painting Buddha, I think it's called.
Right.
And they did a painting guide on Horus. I mean, the techniques that they were using was far more advanced than anything I can do, but it was it definitely inspired me and gave me a good starter to going through that. So that's one of my main resources.
The beautiful thing with YouTube over blogs and forum posts is you get to see them doing it, and there's that very subtle difference between someone describing something accurately and you seeing someone do it, and all of a sudden it can click. And I know that I do a similar style basing to you, and we got that off a YouTube channel. Nice, easy way of doing basing. Mm-hmm. So for some people, they can read something and kind of work it out and work their own way out. I'm quite limited in my ability. I try and paint between the lines and things like that. Edge highlighting, and it's okay. I'm not saying I'm the worst painter ever, but
I think you're definitely improving.
Oh yeah, I am certainly, but
and I'm not saying you were ever bad in the first place. I think
great. But when it comes to, I've got friends who talk about different ways and things like wet blending is just, to me, maybe I can sit and work for hours and try and do it, but bearing in mind the amount of time, etc. I have. But to see the little hints and tricks and tips that people have online, and even actually, although they don't do Heresy, the Games Workshop painting videos,
they're fantastic,
are really good for someone like me.
Yeah.
My Space Wolves for 40k are being painted how they paint their Space Wolves for 40k, and it's simple and it works.
They're very effective, though.
Yeah, and you can find, but that's it. You find your level, so you're stretching yourself with your painting by looking at these guys who've got these techniques. Whereas I'll look at that and go, right, that's not for me. So I'll find the bloke who's doing it well but simply. Yeah, and I'll work off that. So.
You've made a good point actually about the fact that it's not just specifically heresy related subjects which are useful on things like YouTube, just for like general modelling techniques and modelling and painting techniques. For example, I've recently got into airbrushing, and before I did anything, first thing I did was go onto YouTube, start searching up airbrushing just to find out what I needed to buy, the best techniques, how it works, and it's been really useful for things like that as well.
Yeah, I must admit now, whenever I get into something new like that, YouTube's one of the first places I go. It seems to be easier than trawling through forums to find information like that. Yeah. So it's, even before I podcast, it's like, how do I do this? Right, go to YouTube. and that will tell me roughly what I'm doing. Okay, simple. And as you say, you can watch someone do it, which makes a big difference. So yeah, again, on every aspect, I think YouTube's got it covered. We're talking about fluff, you're talking about background behind games. We'll get onto podcasts in a minute, but I watched the Overlords channel with Inquisitor Steve, and watching them play a game and build the fluff around their game and tie it into other things has got me much more interested in fluffing our games up.
Yeah.
Once my Heresy gaming knowledge is a bit better, which is getting there.
We're trying to play more games, aren't we? So.
Yep, it's getting there. Once we've done that, I want to introduce more of a narrative to what we're doing to make the games mean a little bit more.
Mm.
And not necessarily keeping them. One thing they're keen on is not necessarily keeping them even.
No,
but to balance either the game itself or across a set of games to balance those games.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another channel that I love to watch.
Yeah,
mainly because they play the game the way that I want to play the game as well.
It's all about the narrative. It's all about forging the narrative.
Yes, yeah, and yet if I want a more hardcore game, I'll go and watch the WW 40K guys.
Although
they're not hardcore, but they play the game.
Yeah,
it's generally a game set up to play.
Yeah,
and it's a straight out battle.
Yeah, there's no specific scenarios they're necessarily playing other than out the book and So there are very different styles of gaming, and actually I think it's quite good to get. Helps with get the basics down of how things work.
Yeah, it gives you a broad kind of aspect. It's very easy to get stuck into the hardcore tournament gaming, or to not do any hardcore tournament straight out gaming. But you every now and then you remember, actually, no, we're going to kick some butt this game.
Yeah, and
it can be really fun if all you've been doing is narrative gaming. Then you just have a straight up, shoes off, kicking contest. that can be great fun.
So. Yeah, I'll keep my shoes on, thanks.
Yeah. So and from there we might as well go into podcasts, seeing as we talked about them. Now, it has been said that this is the only purely Horus Heresy podcast.
Yeah.
And it still is, as far as I'm aware.
Much to your chagrin.
Yes, indeed. But there are a number of 40k podcasts who do happen to mention 30k.
Mm-hmm.
And even before that, I should mention that we have, after Ulanor, the Horus Heresy Book Review podcast, which myself and David run, which is exclusively about the books. Although a couple of the episodes have had information in the talk back episode, if you will, which is getting a bit mixed up now. I'm doing this podcast, but we're getting there. Yeah. So Battle for the Abyss should be out soon, if not already. So there is that. But as I say, the Overlords podcast and the Independent Characters, two specifically, who are 40k podcasts that do venture into 30k.
Yeah.
So the Overlords guys are getting into it over the last 6 months or so.
Yeah.
They've had a couple of episodes talking specifically about it.
Mm-hmm.
The Independent Characters guys have... Carl's been kind of intrigued by it and interested by it for a while. And some of the other guys are getting more...
It's Forge Rod, so of course he's going to be interested.
Yeah, the other guys are getting more interested in it. But they've reviewed all the Forge Rod books that have come out and do a brilliant job.
They haven't done Conquest yet, though, have they?
It's coming very soon.
That'd be good.
I know that. So I'll be looking forward to that as much as anyone else. And others. I don't listen to a huge amount of 40k podcasts, but I know others do delve in. I know 40k Radio were doing more of a rules look at that, but I don't really know what's going on with them at the moment. So, because I don't listen to them anymore, just on a personal level. But yeah, it's worth having a look around at the 40k podcast and seeing who delves in, who mixes it up.
It's another one of those resources that you need to bear in mind. It's just a few people's point of view, and an opinion and an interpretation. So it might not necessarily fit with what you're looking for, or they might get it wrong. Yeah, like I have a tendency to do a lot of the time. It's weird. Podcasts seem to be taken more as official. It's a very strange thing. The listeners sometimes
as they're listening to a podcast, feel it has more weight to it.
Yeah.
So the podcaster is given this pedestal of being, Greg Dan runs a heresy podcast, so he knows what he's talking about. That's not necessarily true. In fact, we know it's not. But yeah, so again, it's taking a pinch of salt sometimes with each of those, and again, finding the ones that you like. Not everyone likes this podcast. That's fine. Go ahead, find the podcast you do like.
Good luck finding a 30k podcast. If you do find one, let us know.
Yeah, well, please let us know. Yeah. I mean, there are issues with having a 30k podcast, and one of those is the nature of the releases of Forge World is we're getting one book a year.
Yeah,
40k is getting 4 or 5 army books, codexes, etc., etc. So there are different natures, and actually, kind of what the independent characters and what the overlords are doing works really quite well, in that they're talking about it in bits and pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, even if you don't like 40k, I still think I'd be listening to the independent characters. I think it's just a top quality, probably the best gaming podcast, a miniature gaming podcast I listen to.
No, I agree. There was a good few years when both of us actually were only playing Warhammer Fantasy.
Yeah.
And, still keeping up with the background and the story of 40k and everything else. But that was one of the ways, is that even though I wasn't playing 40k, I still listened to podcasts like the independent characters.
Yeah, absolutely. You build up. But there's heaven knows how many 40k podcasts out there. And you could go on naming them. I mentioned those two because I listened to those two.
As far as I'm aware, there's not many others that cover the 30k part of it as much as they do either. No,
well, I'd say I wouldn't know without listening to them, but if you can find one, that's great. And if you can find one that does a decent amount of it, then please let me know, because say I am looking for more 30k podcast info, see if it can come. But yeah, again, it's more of the same really with podcasts. The different attitudes, different styles, different. The two we mentioned there are very much playing the game the way you want to play the game. Mm-hmm. They're not hardcore rules nuts. So if you're looking for the best tournament 30k list out there and how to play it, then you're probably not going to find it on those two podcasts. And you probably won't find it on this podcast. I do apologise for anyone who's waiting for it. We are looking at doing more information on playing the game. As I say, I've said a number of times now, I am playing more this at the moment, 30k, and trying to get more 30k planned.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we can talk a little bit about that in the future. I think, have you got any kind of anywhere else you go and get heresy information?
I think that's mainly it, really. As I say, YouTube's my biggest one, as well as some of the forums, but other than that, no.
Having just asked the question, I've suddenly realised that, yes, there is. Your friends.
Well, so, yes.
Yeah, it's really obvious, and it's the one thing I haven't written down.
Yeah.
When I first got into the hobby and we were going through it, the only place we talked about the heresy was amongst our group of friends.
Yeah.
Because the internet was you had to dial up. For starters, for the younger listeners, you had this awful screeching noise for about a minute and a half while the internet tried to connect.
Yeah.
And even then, when you did, the forums weren't there.
No.
So we talked about heresy in the gaming club.
Yeah.
And at the pub. Well, we didn't go to the pub when it was 15,
when we were in the Games Workshop, the local Games Workshop,
and wherever we were at the time. And even now, at the end of club night, we sometimes sit around and chat for 20 minutes about the heresy.
Yeah. And
people will share their ideas, and sometimes they'll come up with these crazy ideas, and you sit there and think, that's rubbish. And then you break down bits of it, and well, actually, no, that's possible. There's ideas within that. So so just the general chatting about what's going on in the heresy, but also ideas on armies and stuff, actually probably the best place to go is to your mate who you play against.
Yeah.
Because I know for one that Dan, when he's looking for a new army, will run through a number of armies before settling on one. And I used to get text messages saying, yeah, I'm doing X army now. And then at lunchtime, I'd get another text message saying, no, I'm not. I'm doing this army. But there are a number of times where you've said to me, I'm doing a certain army, and I'm like, no, you're not. That's a stupid idea for you because you don't want to do this, and you don't like this aspect of it, and you won't finish it or whatever.
Yeah.
So, almost before it starts, you can put a nail in that coffin and just go, no, it's not happening.
Yeah.
And that has worked with guys who are at the club now talking about playing the game.
Yeah.
Kind of helping them through. I know Joe was looking at doing various things with other legions that don't have the models there, but he'll get frustrated.
Yeah.
So he's just decided to go and buy loads of stuff for his
Death Guard.
Which, everyone's got to have a Death Guard player in the group.
Yeah.
I think it's a rule. And Luke talking about what he wants for his Alpha Legion.
Yeah.
And so we sit and discuss it as mates and say, all right, well, blah, 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 would you use this, that?
Yeah, I've been bouncing a few ideas on things like colour schemes as well and painting.
Yeah. So, no one really knows how well you paint, apart from the best people who know how you paint are the people you play against the most, etc., etc. So, if I came in one day and had it wouldn't happen with me and said, I'm going to start doing 3-tone blending at the same wet brush, blah, blah, blah. And people would just kind of go, right, okay.
I need to build up on that.
Exactly. And save you that time, effort, money, and lead you in a way that's quite good. So it's quite easy to forget. If you've got a group of people around you, they are usually the best sounding board.
Yeah.
And see what they've got, see what information they can give and everything else. So yeah, on that cosy, fluffy note about talk to your friends, I think that's the main topic done. And we'll move into closing the show. Before we do get into all the outro stuff, I did mention right at the top of the show that we played a game.
Yeah.
And then failed to talk about said game in my usual manner of being well organised. So we'll throw it on here. For anyone not interested in listening, you could skip through the next 5 minutes or so. But I thought it would be really interesting to talk about because it's the first game of Heresy I've won.
Yeah. Spoilers.
I don't think it's much of a spoiler. So we met up over the Christmas period and played a game just because. Wanting to try and use as many of the models I had, but try a few different things out as well. So I will go through my list roughly. I had a Magus Prime on his Abeyant thing with loads of gear that didn't really pay any attention much into the game. A couple of units of 3 Thalax, a Castellax, the Thanatar Siege Automata, a Cryos tank with a Pulsar Fusil, 3 Myrmidian Destructors with conversion beamers, the Questoris Knight, and then 2 units of 20 Tech Thralls. And partly the reason I took them was because they've come down in price.
Yeah.
So I didn't actually have I don't have Tech Thrall models yet. I haven't bought any. But at £5 a model, I wasn't going to buy any. And myself and someone else were actually looking for alternative models to use that were cheaper. But not because we want to do it cheap, but because it's just stupidly expensive to do them at that much. And although it's only £3.50 a model now, it's only £1.50 saving from what they started at. It's enough to make them viable to purchase. So chuck 40 in there to see how they go, and did all right. And you had?
So I was using because I was trying to use a few models which I hadn't used before, so it's a bit of a hodgepodge list. But I was running a Sons of Horus, so I had a Master of Signals, a Navigator since I'd picked up the event-only model. Thought, I'd give him a try. Not that he did much, he died, I think, first turn. Good shot off. 2 Legion Tactical Squads, a support squad with plasma guns in a Rhino.
Yeah.
Unit of 10 Reavers, the Sons of Horus specific squadron.
Combat squad, yeah.
Yeah. A Fire Raptor, and the big man Horus himself.
Yeah, the Mortis Dreadnought.
Oh, yeah.
And a Sicarian Venator.
Oh, yeah. Well, some of those I forgot about because they died quite quickly.
Yeah, yeah. And the big man Horus himself.
Yeah.
And for 5th game of Horus Heresy, in a row, that you stole first turn off me.
Yeah, stole the initiative, yeah.
This happens in every time I play the Heresy. I don't know why.
Yeah.
It helps with Horus.
Yeah, he did give me... I was stealing an initiative on a 4+, which helps.
Yeah, so, that's something... Is that a specific rule to him, or is that Primarch rule? I've seen.
Can't remember now, actually.
No, without looking. But yeah, it's quite an interesting...
I think it's specific to him, because I know there are other characters as well as Primarchs that do give you that rule.
Yeah, so there's the opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
And
we played one of the
book 4 missions.
Yeah, it was one of the book 1 missions. It was the
first
mission.
We were
looking
actually. We started.
It was the variant on kill points.
That's right.
Where infantry gave you extra kill points.
Yeah.
So we played that one. Yeah. So I managed to steal the initiative, which was quite nice.
Yeah. I mean, the key things were you had Horus, the Fire Raptor, and the
Reavers.
The Reavers off the board.
Yeah.
Stole the initiative and didn't do a huge amount of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And in my first turn, managed to kill the Sicarian.
Yeah.
And
most of a tactical squad.
It all comes down to Thanatar Siege Automata.
Yeah.
I think I'm getting more than one.
I didn't know they could come in squads. That's disgusting.
But either way, even running them individually as separate squads.
Yes.
I like them. I think they're an amazing model. I think they're quite cool. I love the way they work. With the Magus Prime being able to share their line of sight. I just think they're fun. They're great. They're not amazing.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to be. They are, although they're high toughness, they're still quite fragile.
Mm.
So you've got to be a bit careful with them. But when you're presenting the target with a knight and the pulsar fusil on the Krios doing 4 strength 9 AP1 shots or whatever it is, then there are targets to worry about. So, but we talked before about either you're dealing with power armor all the time or stuff's in cover all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the time I found my opponents in cover, and having the rules of the Mechanicum with the Thalax reducing cover saves, the Thanatar with his upgrade reducing a save by 1, but with the plasma bombard, whatever it's called, mortar, making you re-roll successful cover saves.
Yeah.
There's a lot of really cool things to get around that.
Mm.
So started to appreciate exactly what that can do to really... It's like, Dan's in cover. Oh, well, that's fine. I'm still going to plough as much shooting in there as I would if they were in the open.
Yeah.
Because it's only going to save you maybe 1 in 3.
Mm-hmm.
So it becomes more worthwhile than if I'm in cover and you've got 2 options between cover and non-cover. With your bolt guns, with tactical squads, you can probably be shooting at the ones that you can hurt that little bit easier.
Yeah.
So I thought that was quite groovy. Essentially, the game was you not rolling your reserve rolls.
Yeah. Well, I was lucky. Well, not lucky, but Horus comes on when I choose him to come on.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to roll. He just comes on. Even better if you deep strike him, because he doesn't even have to scatter when you deep strike. So it's like he's almost guaranteed. But I decided to run. I after the first turn, I was a little bit downcast because you'd pretty much taken off a quarter of my army at that stage that was already on the board. So I thought, well, okay, I'll bring Horus on now. I'm not going to be able to do much. Let's stress test him. Let's just push him forward and see what he can do. So he came running on turn 2. Unfortunately, nothing else did until later on in the game.
And say Horus being on foot and you running him onto the table, he was very much on your side.
Yeah.
So I was like, I felt the same as you. Okay, right, we'll see what I can do to him. But unfortunately, first turn I couldn't really shoot him when he came on.
No.
So the knight's gone bundling forwards, and I'm looking at Horus and I'm thinking, yeah, I'm going to lose some stuff to him, but we'll try some bits and try to kill some other stuff first, which allows you to charge Horus into a knight.
Yeah, and he's the man.
Yeah. Beautiful thing about Horus is having the 2 weapon options.
He can choose. He can split his attacks between the 2 weapons as well. So you've got the choice of the lightning claw, which will tear through infantry and most things, and his mace of big hittiness, which is high strength and concussive as well. And he's got a ridiculous amount of attacks, particularly if you're. I think he's got 5 attacks base, and then you get
D3.
Plus D3 if you're weapon skill 4 or less.
Yeah.
Which most things in your army were, which was quite nice. So he was just dishing out so much punishment. I think it took him 2 rounds to take down the knight, though.
It did, yeah.
He didn't take it out the first time. I think he left you on a whole point.
Rolls weren't great.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting point with knights. You see a lot of people, you've got to destroy it before it gets into my lines. You've got to destroy it. Depending on what you're fighting it with, when it blows up, it's all about that central... The smaller size explosion.
When it explodes, it's a bigger strength explosion from the centre.
Yeah, so there's 3 radiuses of explosion. And I've found almost every time my knights died, it's to something like Terminators.
Yeah.
Like, a Primarch, something like that, which can handle the further away explosive things. Yeah. So unless you get the correct scatter on that template, just the size of the base of the knight usually means that stuff isn't really that engaged with that the really strong part of the template. I mean, in this example, it zoomed straight off and did nothing. You made your invulnerable save.
Yeah, I think you clipped Horus with the outer explosion.
Yeah, it's always going to be hard when you've got a Primarch and they've got 3
He took a wound off him. But then he got it back later on.
The knight didn't take the wind off him.
I thought the explosion did.
That was a little bit. No, that was a little bit later. But so you, when you've got something that's got an invulnerable save of 3 or 4 plus, even 4 plus, then I found that they tend not to do a huge amount. You have to get very lucky.
Yeah.
And even when I played Pete with his Eldar, his big Eldar ship, and I used my Terminators to kill that, and I didn't really know the rules on exploding super heavies back then. And I was like, oh no, I've done this wrong. And then I read the rules and went, well, no, you have to get very lucky to cause the damage that people usually fear that you can cause with those things.
Yeah.
So that was quite. So Horus dealt with him nicely in 2 turns, meant I couldn't shoot at him.
Yeah. Well, that was the plan. Get him in combat as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
And then...
So, I mean, my next tactic was as Horus carried across the battlefield, I've got 18 tech thralls still left in this unit. And we'll see how quickly Horus can deal with them. So I've charged them in. And even with his lightning claw...
Still 3 rounds of combat, I
You're
think?
hitting on 3s.
Yep.
Which is a problem. You are wounding on 2s with rerolls.
Yeah.
So that's fine. That's not a problem. But hitting on 3s means you're only hitting with... Although you have 8, 9 attacks, you're hitting 6 times. So actually it's taking the 4 rounds to go through all those tech thralls. For because I made them fearless.
Yeah, that was big.
Which is the huge part of that. It means they, they're doing that job of
holding they act as a tar pit, don't
500 point beast of a unit.
Yeah.
And within that, they had a 5+ feel no pain, which doesn't work against Horus, but allows you to absorb a little bit more of that incoming fire, because people don't want to waste big weapons on tech thralls.
No.
Because they're naff, frankly. Although they did take a wound off Horus.
That was it. Yeah, that was it.
But yeah, I kind of looked at this unit and I was like, awesome. I mean, when we laid them out on the table, I was very much aware that I had about 14 models before I put them down.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I've got 54 models.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, it feels like I've got a bit more of an army now. And playing the game. Although when you make them fearless, I don't think they become scoring anymore.
Oh, okay. I was about to say, because
there is a downside to it, and they can't. There's a few things they can't do.
Are you sure? Is it they can't score at all, or they just don't have objectives secured?
I would have to look to remember, because this book
that'll
was
written,
this book
that'll
was
be
written
a 6th edition.
6th edition rule, and I believe it's not scoring. I'd have
or 5th
to check.
edition.
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah. It didn't really become relevant in this game, so I wasn't too worried about it. But yeah. There are downsides to it. They can't sweep in advance, blah, 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 blah. they're not there to do that at the end of the day. It's a 100-point unit, just under 100-point unit for 20 wounds.
Yeah.
So that's what you're looking at it for.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Horus wiped them out and killed some Thalax and finished off the remainder of the other unit of tech thralls.
Yeah,
which
didn't quite make it into, because he was gunning for your
tech priest, the Magus Prime.
Yeah, and
he was running away, valorously running away.
Yeah,
So unfortunately, we didn't really get to stress test Horus much because I didn't necessarily have the guns to deal with him, and this became I became aware of this quite quickly. The Krios would have been brilliant, but you'd kept hitting that with your Mortis Dread, and eventually it died.
Yeah.
And then I had conversion beamers on my Myrmidium Destructors. And my issue with conversion beamers is, to be the weapon I want them to be, they've got to be over 42 inches away from anything, which is an extremely long distance.
When you're playing on a 6x4 table. Yeah,
and although they were great at killing infantry, I have stuff in my army that can kill the infantry. If I get another Thanatar Siege Automata, then I've got, I'm placing 2 of those templates. I've got various other things which are good at killing infantry. The Castellat comes with a lot of shots, things like that. So I'm trying to slowly work out how to kit out my stuff. Not to optimise it, but just to make it useful and not frustrating.
Fulfil the role you wanted to.
Every time I was firing those destructors, I was like, "Oh, this is not the guns I want," and it was just frustrating me.
The problem, because your main target for them was the Dreadnought, who we later named Boris, because
Boris the Dreadnought would not die.
He's invincible.
He never died. Well, he did die in the end. I think turn 6 or 7 he died.
Yeah.
But this is like the third game that I've played against him, and it's the first time he's died.
Yeah.
And I keep shooting at him.
But that was the problem with the conversion beamers, because they're a blast template. You're not necessarily hitting him. No. It's although what's their ballistic skill on those guys?
I think it's 5.
Yeah, so it's quite a high ballistic skill.
It is.
But even
it's more the strength.
Yeah,
because it's strength 8 up until 42 inches, and after 42 inches, it's become strength 10, and that's what I want them for.
Oh yeah, that's the big difference.
They say it's brilliant for killing infantry and light vehicles. That's fine, but when you get up to that T12, I was also rolling badly on the armor pen, but that can happen. That's something you almost have to take into account. It's very easy to roll 3 dice less than 4. It's not hard to do, particularly when I was getting 1 or 2 through and you were making cover saves. So,
even with the -1 cover, I was still getting lucky on those.
These things happen. So, but also they were it just meant they were tactically less flexible than I wanted them to be.
Yeah,
you brought the Fire Raptor on. I didn't have a lot to shoot at that.
Yeah, I was unlucky there because it didn't come on until turn 5.
No, and that made a big difference.
Whereas I think if it had come on earlier, it would have been it could have put a serious dent in your army. Yeah, without you being able to deal too much, because as you say, all of your high strength weapons were blast. Yeah, so you couldn't actually do too much damage to it.
So that's something. Looking at the Horus Heresy weapons across the board, I didn't really consider. I mean, our attitude to this was like, okay, we want to use the new toys we've got, the stuff we've got painted. You could tell by the army list we're not too worried about going all out and winning the game. No. It was utilising the stuff we had. So I wrote the army list like 20 minutes before we played. And I actually quite liked the army list. It was just, I say, if I'd swapped a few weapons around, I'd have had a bit more flexibility and therefore a bit more fun in that list. I mean, the game was fun. But say, there was a couple of frustrating elements of it.
Have you got much options for anti-air in the Mechanicum list?
You can make the Thalax can come with one of 3 rules, and I've been taking the anti-tank one, which allows them to reroll tank hunters, allowing them to reroll unsuccessful attempts to penetrate vehicles. Yes. They can take one where if they don't move, they get Skyfire.
But you'd need something other than conversion beamers on them to...
No, that's the Thanatar, the jump. Not the Thanatar, the Thalax, the jump infantry.
Oh, sorry.
Jetpack
infantry. Yeah, sorry. I'm still
with the lightning guns and whatever. Oh, we found... with that, I'd taken a weapon on that, which was a heavy weapon. And not being able to...
Because they weren't relentless, they couldn't...
Yeah, again, the one issue I have with Mechanicum is whenever I'm looking for a rule, I have to look through 2 or 3 books, and it's always in the middle of a book. And I don't have a nice red book to look through, which would make it a little bit simpler.
The one good thing is anyone who's picked up the limited edition of Conquest comes with the summary cards.
Yes, those summary cards were pretty useful.
Yeah.
For weapons. So I'm starting to get the weapons down a bit more, and it's a lot easier, a lot quicker when it's like, okay, I'm firing this weapon I've never heard of before. Right, okay, that's on that card. Boom, it's right in front of me. Problem is with the Mechanicum, they've got a lot of rules.
Yeah.
So just trying to get them into my head, I'm considering writing up a cheat sheet for my own of those, which would help a little bit until they get solid, and even maybe to give one to my opponent.
Well, because when you turned up, you obviously had all your cases with you, but then you brought in this almost like a suitcase bag, and it was just had your books in, because you had to bring that just to have. Yeah,
to be able to play,
all the rules,
be able to play what I wanted
to.
I've got, bring in, I don't know how many kilos of books in, but it's no small amount. No. So it's a bit of a pain, but as I say, as I get used to the rules, and if I can try and write up a cheat sheet, and maybe Battle Scribe, I know someone contacted me actually. I can't remember their name, and I've lost their email. They've Battle Scribed up some of the armies.
Oh, okay.
I
use, this is another resource we didn't talk about actually, was for writing army lists. There's plenty of apps out there. Well, I can name 2 anyway. You've got, as you say, you've got Battle Scribe, and the one I use is Quartermaster.
Yeah, and I think Army Builder were working on an app.
Right.
I don't know if it's been done or not. I don't use Army Builder. I'm not a fan of Army Builder personally. A lot of people are. I'm not. But Quartermaster's a great app, and Battle Scribe's something I'm looking into.
Yeah,
because Quartermaster is iOS only.
Yes,
which is its major downfall.
Yeah.
So we played that game. We had a good fun game. It's good getting Horus on the table.
Yeah.
And watching him clean house. And me realise every turn, what can I fire at Horus? None of these weapons are good enough. I was still lacking AP1 apart from my tank.
Yeah.
Things like that. So yeah, it's given me a lot to think about moving forwards. Need to get some Castellax, I think. I only had one. It was quite fun to use, but we'll have to see how that goes. So yeah, hopefully in the future we'll have a bit more detailed look at the kind of what we're using and how we're using it.
Yeah.
But yeah. So yeah, we can move into one other little thing we forgot was Twitter. Going back to the main part of the show. The Warhammer community in the UK and America particularly have been using Twitter for 2 or 3 years, the tournament side of things.
Yeah.
And it almost became the place to go rather than any forums or anything like that. I don't know how well it's taken off with the 40k side of things, but I do know that there's a hashtag for the warmongers.
Yeah.
So for those who don't know how Twitter works, you have a hashtag, means you can search by that hashtag, and anyone who's put that hashtag into their tweets will appear on the search function. So if you hashtag warmongers, you get put on that list, and people will search by these tags and see your tweets about your whatever you're posting up, or your tournament, your models, your painting, what have you. So it's even kind of easier and quicker than Facebook in working out and seeing people's models, work in progress pictures, things like that. I'm a great fan of Twitter.
Yeah.
Not as Twitter itself, but as a gaming aid.
It's fantastic. Just keeping in touch with people, and as you say, it's really easy to find people with similar interests as well.
Yeah. Again, it's one of those things. Once you start following people who are into the hobby, once you follow 2 or 3, it will link you to the people they follow, and that kind of thing. So
what I did fairly recently was go through and have a look at the people following like the Imperial Truth Twitter handle, and anyone who was following that had a quick look at their account just to see if they were into the hobby and were posting things I'd be interested in, and I'd start following them as well. Yeah, and that's led on to other people following me, and I'm started following them as well. So it's brilliant for that kind of thing.
In fact, even more than Facebook and anything else.
Yeah,
it's that much more selective in that you choose what you want to see within, within reason, because people can retweet things, etc., etc. But if you don't want to see Jeff down the road, his stuff, then you don't follow him and you don't see it appear on your timeline. So you've got a bit more control over what you're looking at, and there's things like Miniature Monday, which started to become a thing where every Monday people would post up what they've been working on over the weekend, and things like that. So and news spreads very quick on Twitter as well. So
it's good to see sometimes you see a few rumours as well, and not so much with Forge World, because they're pretty open about what their new releases are going to be down the line anyway. But people tend to post a lot of photos of things that they've seen. The up and coming releases. If it's around an event, say a Forge World Open Day, a Games Day, a Horus Heresy Weekender, I think personally I find it easier to tweet the information than to put it on Facebook. Yeah. Although I keep meaning I need to look into linking the two accounts, which you can do. Yeah. But yeah, tweeting is my first point of call because it's just that a little bit easier and quicker to do. So I know that the Black Library Weekender was the first time we saw the dates for the Heresy Weekender, so I took a photo of it, put it on Twitter, and that picture then was used by a number of people in forums, and information spread that way. And that happens with things like the European Open Day was very quickly taken from Twitter to other places. So, yeah, I find it an incredibly useful resource. And through that and through the fantasy system, I've become friends with people who run painting studios and things as well. So it becomes a much more, for me, a much more immediate way to ask a question. I'm trying to paint X. Yeah. How do you do yours? And what do you recommend that someone who's less good than you can do to make it easier? That kind of thing. So, yeah, really useful. But yeah, I think that's it for the show. It's good to have you on again, Daniel. Thank you for having me.
That's all right. We'll get you back on it again when we're talking more about games and a few other things. Yeah, I'm sure. And I hope you guys enjoyed listening to it. If you did, then please let us know. When I post up on when I post the show up, I put a note on Facebook saying the show's up. If you have any kind of feedback on the show that you just want to put on the Facebook thread, that is brilliant. Whack it on there. Feel free, people, to come and post on there. If you do want to send me an email, it's greg@theimperialtruth.com. If you want to get a hold of Dan, you can send me an email if you want, or you can follow him on Twitter at Dan Como. So that's DANCOMEAU. Yeah, foreign name. My Twitter is @ChildOfFang, and the show Twitter is @Imperial_Truth. You can find me on Facebook as well. Imperial Truth on Facebook. Just search for it. It'll appear. And iTunes reviews. Always going to ask for iTunes reviews. They're really helpful. So if you haven't left one, then please go along and do. If you have left one, thank you very much. I've read a few more that were really good and much appreciated. So, as we mentioned before, we have got the Forge World Weekender coming up in the 6th, 7th of February, something around
7th and the 8th.
Yep. Dan and I will be there with our good friend Mark, who's Pete's brother, aforementioned, and we'll be there, probably popping to Games Workshop on the Friday before. I mentioned it before, but if you are interested in the Horus Heresy and you are around that area, even if you're not going to the Weekender, by the sounds of it, Games Workshop's going to be full of people playing Horus Heresy who are then going on to the Weekender. So if you're around Lenton, the Nottingham area, then get along to Warhammer World and have a look at a lot of resin, I think, on the tables, which could be quite cool. So, and if you're going, feel free to come and say hi to us guys. That'll be great, and it'll be good to meet some of you listeners and chat about anything heresy and what have you. I think that's us done out, Dan. Yeah. So we'll see you again in a few weeks. You have been listening to The Imperial Truth.